All right. Axel, let's start by talking about what you're working on here in Boston and Cambridge to disrupt traditional development of drugs and innovation.
So actually, when this started is like 2.5 years ago, when there was a board session at Bayer, and we were essentially asking ourselves, how could we change the concepts and the process and the design of getting more out of research towards transformational innovation. And actually what we did, we basically looked at all the articles that the Harvard Business School basically published over the years and just kind of extracted what is, for me, the center of biotech innovation, Boston, looking from a research perspective. And it was a very interesting observation that all the articles essentially had 4 points that were similar. So first one was, transformative innovation takes much more money, much longer time, and the reason for that is that it's simply significantly more uncertain, and you have to put time in to learn. Now, the even more interesting thing was that all these authors, these professors from business schools said, disruptive innovation cannot and should not be measured with economic metrics. And actually, even more important, should not run down the classical linear stage gate process that big industry uses.
Because the idea is a cure.
Somehow, yeah, and we are also trying to cure things, what means this only happens to a market that is actually not existing yet. Right. So everyone was looking at this, was looking into our biotech industry, our own industry, and we realized even though these professors are telling us what to do, we're actually doing something completely different. Everything out there is based on economic metrics, return on investment, push to IPOs quickly. And we set up, beginning of 2015, an experiment where we said, let's build a unit that goes along 5 pillars. 5 big ideas, significant Series A investments over a long time. We, from Bayer, add all our patents and knowledge into these companies and leave them still completely independent. And the final thing, I think, was the critical one. And actually, we decided we incentivize those teams, including myself, by the way, not on return on investment metrics, but on numbers of patients we cure in 5 years. And I tell you, this is changing everything. If you talk to someone who wants to work for one of these companies, you get back to the core of what it's all about. Medicine originally was designed to get someone who is sick back healthy. So essentially, that is our approach to transform or kind of really move the needle from treatment to cure.
Talk a little bit, though, about your thoughts or even criticism of the return on investment model that we do see in most pharma companies in Cambridge and Boston.
I think it's not potentially a direct criticism. It's actually, you always get what you incentivize, right? I mean, if you incentivize multiples on dollars, you, of course, drive people to push companies to an IPO very quickly. Now, you know, our investment models have a return on investment on a 3 to 4 year base. Now, the innovation cycle in biotech takes 10 years. Right. So you see this mismatch, right? And I think the mismatch is so prominent that we, to my opinion, release, even here in Cambridge and Boston, too early young biotech companies to the stock market and change the metrics. And that is kind of what we try to avoid with our model, at least to give them 5 to 6 years focusing on the science and not focusing on the next financing round. That's the whole idea.
Talk a little bit about sharing knowledge about patents with startups and companies you're going to start working with.
Perhaps I can give one example of kind of the first company we built. This is called Casibia. It's kind of focusing on DNA editing in Cambridge. Now
CRISPR.
It's CRISPR-Cas9, basically a joint venture with CRISPR Therapeutics. And when talking to CRISPR Therapeutics, we realized that for an in vivo DNA editing approach, the current protein, Cas9, most likely needs substantial protein engineering. Now, we at Bayer, we are really professional kind of doing protein engineering. So essentially, we infused our patents exclusively in that new company. And so in that sense, this company is now allowed to basically use all the Bayer intellectual property to kind of modify and hopefully adapt this CRISPR-Cas9 molecule for in vivo treatments of patients.
And you're working on children with genetic heart defects.
Yeah, that's a good point. So essentially, the Casibia idea was, if you remember, kind of we started always with this breakthrough idea, and the first one was, could we not cure children with genetic heart disease? And that was kind of the anchor point for Casibia. Later, we added also certain very difficult to treat blood disorders and blindnesses. But that was the starting point. So essentially, what Casibia tries to do, and it will definitely take us 4 to 5 years to get to it, is help kids that otherwise would die after 2 or 3 years to really kind of get these heart defects corrected. Currently, it's very difficult to do this with the classical gene therapy, so CRISPR is most probably the tool to do.
You're also working in agriculture.
So you're right, Bayer works in agriculture. I have also the mandate to kind of work in agriculture, and I have to say we currently look at 2, 3, I believe, very exciting ideas. One is, I think, really at the tip of my heart. It's like the challenge we face with the growing population and the continuous reduction of arable land to actually really grow what we want to eat. So it's a little bit of a dilemma that our cities grow, that the output we have to take from the soil is literally exhausting the soil. And we are currently trying to develop a new company that is indeed trying to rejuvenate soil so that we can bring back what has been lost to erosion and kind of exhaustion over time. It's actually a very exciting project. I have to say the agricultural space is, from a technology perspective, really very exciting. It's also kind of emerging in Boston these days very nicely.
And locally, give us a picture of what's happening at 610 Main Street in Kendall Square, where you are at Bayer Life Sciences, and then what's ahead?
So, indeed, in the coming hours even, we will basically move in with Casibia, our first company, and Blue Rock, our second company, into 610 Main Street, where there are a few of my employees and Bayer employees helping that these companies interact, also from a technology exchange perspective. And that is basically our center for building new companies within Boston and the surrounding. Indeed, I can only say the nice piece about Boston is indeed that you have this high concentration of talent that, of course, is a pool if you have an extremely interesting idea. And in that context, I think what I just mentioned at the beginning, our attempt to have an incentive system that focuses on really some tangible output, cures of patients, is actually very well received in a city that don't have these kinds of incentives.
But you stayed in stealth mode for about 2 years, 2.5 years. Yeah. Why did you do that?
First of all, I actually didn't even believe myself that this could work. So I felt, okay, let's just be careful. Indeed, the other key piece was, if you try to build a network where patents play a key role and where you want to exchange patents, it is very important that you first understand the patent landscape. And I have to say, in our industry, it's extremely difficult to actually understand that landscape. So when we identified our ideas for stem cells, what is our second company, Blue Rock, we immediately realized that actually the tool we need most likely in that area is a DNA editing tool. So we changed our strategy and started with building a DNA editing company first, then launching the stem cell company. So you see, it was very important to stay silent in that area because discussions, which patents would have been really difficult. Yeah.
Great. We were close to time. Yeah. Anything you want to add, though? Anything I'm not asking you that I should be or that I'm missing?
Yeah. No, I think perhaps it's a message to the audience. I believe if you go home today and you think through this, what I said, what it's actually all about, is it really about return on investment, or is it actually curing patients? Just try to challenge us back whether we go the right approach, because I believe if more would go towards this, focusing on the tangible output, what is a cure, something that is fundamentally changing our healthcare system, we could do a lot of good things together. Bayer alone will has no chance to actually pull this off. I would need more thinking towards letting perhaps young companies a little bit longer time to make robust technologies, because it will essentially all of us help, because we are all patients at one day. So in that sense, I think, me at least, I hope that a lot of people chime in on this concept, that we try.
Thank you, Axel.
Thanks.
We don't have time for Q&A, but hopefully people can talk to you at lunch.
Good. Thanks.